Cold intro.
Going
It's
on.
been,
And
it's
then
been
that's when Joe Rogan said,
yeah,
sorry, we're
exactly
already in the
right.
middle.
Well, welcome back from your vacation, first one in a few years.
Yeah.
What got you so excited that you stopped vacationing?
There's always lots of stuff happening in AI, as you know. What is happening? Sora 2 just came out a few hours ago.
Yeah, what do you think about it?
I think the most interesting thing is that they built a social network to go along with it. They're trying to compete directly with TikTok, but it's more of like an AI generated TikTok.
I thought that was interesting. Do you think that Meta is concerned about that?
Definitely. And I'm sure Larry Ellison is as well, because in the meantime, it seems like Oracle is acquiring TikTok. Maybe.
Interesting. Isn't Larry Ellison one of Sam Altman's mentors?
It looks like it. Sam Altman seems to pick the most rich CEOs and gets them on his side, at least for a time.
Yeah,
He had Microsoft, he had Elon Musk, made him Microsoft CEO, now
yeah.
Oracle CEO. It's actually very interesting because Sam has helped get Oracle to be bigger than ever, which is surprising.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's being helped by Oracle, but he's also helping back significantly, right? It's pretty amazing.
The
The
most interesting thing for me about the Sora 2 launch was
Yeah.
there's copyrighted music inside of it. So somebody just showed a video where they did like a spooky scene and it had the Stranger Things soundtrack to it exactly.
Okay, and they didn't add that. They didn't upload that.
No, they said that it was like playing music and then it sort of like changed scene because it's like a multi-scene thing sort of too. And
Yeah.
so when it changed scene, the music sort of morphed into the Stranger
Okay.
Things soundtrack. And
Wow.
I thought that you'd find that interesting being a music guy.
I would find that interesting. It sounds like uh, that is not licensed, maybe, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You think it's generating video, but also generating audio, you're saying?
Oh yeah, they all generate audio. That's the whole thing with this next generation of video generation is that like the Grok Imagine sound is quite bad and that was true previously. And I think
Yeah.
OpenAI had turned it off because it's a multimodal model.
Hmm.
And so I think that they wanted to do music, and now the music is pretty good. I thought the video was quite good, actually.
Their demo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity potentially for a social network that's developing AI music that's legally licensed properly.
I'm not convinced that human beings will want to use a social network that's just for AIs.
No, not just for AIs. It's a human network, but maybe 10% of it is kids playing around making AI music.
Yeah.
But
I'm not so like one thing I'm starting to see is a not a backlash, but people are sort of I've noticed this in my own life. We just watched 101 Dalmatians from like 1958. It
by the
was
way, shout
way
out to Joshua Liu, one of our biggest fans. We have hundreds of
nice.
people live streaming this, so
Nice. Hi,
he's one of
Joshua.
the big fans.
Good to see you. Well, I hope everything's going okay up there in Washington. So I think, yeah, like there's a huge backlash to computer art that
Yeah,
I'm seeing, that people have a preference for human created art. And
yeah,
I'm not even sure. I think that's ultimately going to drive. I think we've talked about this. I think that's ultimately going to drive the requirement for IDs,
yeah. Uh,
right?
People, but you need some kind of certification of like this is like AI slop free content. This is AI slop free video. This is AI slop free writing, right? There's still some good, like that top AI newsletter. The reason why it's still a top AI newsletter is because they don't use AI to write anything in the email newsletter. They
Yeah,
hired the top writers and they all write everything.
yeah. Well, it's kind of like this podcast, right? It's like we could, in theory, do it with AI, but especially now, but I just don't think it would be very good.
Yeah. No, it would not be good right now and ever. Like you said, it's like if you're watching a robot pro athlete who wants to see robot Tom Brady.
Yeah. although like I shouldn't say something controversially, but we do have entire whatever sports that are not like very good, and people pay and watch them, and it's a whole thing. So I don't know. Maybe there will be like a robot fighting league. I think we were talking last time, like if you put one of those robot fighters in with a human being, like that's an interesting fight.
Yeah, I guess what's the difference between the pro athlete and say like so what about supermodels, right? Or models? See, people seem okay using AI for models. And then there was the big controversy about this. Have you seen the Tilly Norwood stuff?
The only controversy I know about modeling is that the first AI supermodel was a black woman, and they put her in pictures with white women who are real people, or real humans or whatever. And I thought that was a little bit weird. Personally, I didn't understand like why replace the black lady instead of the white ladies as well. So.
Yeah, I think they were trying to get free diversity instead of paying.
Yeah, well, I think
they
maybe there was
not pay.
I think the issue is there weren't many like black people who looked like white people, but who were black, and I think that was the idea. So, what's the story with Tilly Norwood?
That is an actor. It's a virtual actor that apparently
Okay.
is going around to agencies and trying to get signed by an agent to act in movies.
Mm.
And the character's name is Tilly Norwood, and actors are looking at it and commenting that it's very worrying. But I guess part of my question is like, why are we worried about this, but not like models in JCPenney magazines, and not like Nano Banana just replaced all of like Adobe Photoshop and anyone who has skills in Photoshop for almost anything. And, will anyone say, oh, I only want to pay for someone who Photoshops this if a human Photoshops this? Like, why do we care about some things being human and other things everyone's fine with using it?
Well, I think it goes back to there's different kinds of people. Android and iPhone people is kind of how I've termed this for the last 20 years. And I think Android people don't care about like quality or whatever. They just want whatever it is, they want the MVP at the cheapest price possible. They don't really have an interest in art or.
Can I rant about Android phones for a second?
Sure.
They're
I mean, like
really bad.
What was that?
Have you used an Android phone recently?
Oh yeah, no. I've developed apps for iPhone and Android, and Android is just the worst.
But like recently, have you used an Android phone? Like,
no. What's going on with it?
I tried a Samsung phone, right? It should be like, maybe second best to Google Pixel.
Yeah.
And it comes with pre-installed apps that like very forward, including TikTok and some other random one, saying, hey, we installed these apps for you. You're welcome. And then when you're using any app, it's like asking you, oh, by the way, can we install these 87 other apps to surveil you?
Oh yeah.
Constantly. And I'm like, no. And I realized the only reason it's asking me is because I was in Europe when I opened it. And like, okay, if I were in the US, it wouldn't even ask me. It would just install spyware, not tell you. Every app's doing this in Android. You have no control over it. And it's pretty sad. It's like a terrible experience. It slows down. Everything I did took like half a second. Every tap took like half a second. Like, I don't know if I'm particularly sensitive to it because I developed like the Facebook newsfeed and was hyper focused on every frame. But iPhone, I'm just not, things happen instantaneously. I'm not worried about the speed.
Yeah, I think the future, like in the past, you do this futurism where you'd wear the goggles and like you couldn't do anything because it was like constantly ads and it was just really intense.
This is Black Mirror.
Yeah, and then rich people had none of that. That's kind of for me is the Android iPhone break.
That's literally what's happening right now. I didn't realize that it was that bad. I thought especially with Samsung, it would be okay.
Well, the other one is Netflix. Okay, so like now there's like an infinite amount of Netflix content, and a lot of people that I know are shifting away from Netflix, and we with our kids we go to like plays and stuff where human beings act, and they're packed. Like every time, they're just totally packed. And so I'm not trying to say that like all the Silicon Valley playhouses are hard to get tickets for human productions, but I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're paying those playwrights more and the actors more,
Yeah,
because
I don't know.
they were caught in the SB 11 stuff, because they would pay they would pay an actor for a season of being in a play, like a pack of gum and a nickel, basically. And obviously doesn't compare to the hundreds of hours they spent training for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, so that's my rant about Android. I feel really bad for that ecosystem. It's
It's
it makes me
terrible.
support Apple's stance to like leave the EU if they're forced to install apps that are just terrible. Like
Oh yeah.
I think they're the only company holding the line on anything that would just completely,
Well, like
like,
again,
if people
yeah.
think it's bad now with technology, like wait till that last moat is done and like we're just completely destroyed by everything.
But again, I think nobody cares. Like my experience at various companies advising everything about the Android ecosystem is that people just view it as like a shitty user base that they want to get as much money out of as possible. And so they just do not care about anything that's not strict legal compliance and revenue maximization. Because like
Wow.
you hear it from people, right? They're like, oh, we can't do that, like it'll make the users angry, like when you talk about like an iOS app or something. And
Yeah.
it's especially because it's been a while since I've seen a woman with an Android phone in the West. Like I think they have extremely strong lock-in, the iPhone does, on these groups. And as you know, like women represent something like 90% of the consumer buying population. And so when you look at like all the effort that's spent on QA and making sure that things look right and they function correctly from screen to screen and all that kind of stuff, it's just like so much effort is put into iOS, and Android is, like I said, I just think of it like it's a cost center. And I think that's how people react to it, which is strange as well, because in theory, it's supposed to be this open thing, and it's, anyone can develop against it. And so you could have, if the market were efficient, you would think that somebody could build like a privacy Android, and that would have some level of value. But apparently nobody cares. So.
Yeah, they don't care about user experience, and anyone who cares even a lick about user experience just moves to the iPhone.
Yeah, it's
Or
weird.
they spend a ton of time investing in like side loading all these random apps to fix ads and all that stuff
Yeah,
on
well,
the
it's like
Android. It's a lot
I
of
don't know if
time.
did you ever try to use Linux on your desktop, and then you're like trying to download the printer drivers, and then your monitor would stop working after they did
Yeah,
an update. You have to like figure out how to
right,
get the
right.
monitor to work again. And like I'm all about it, but also at some level you're like, okay, this is a bit much.
Yeah, spending a lot. I mean, it's fun to learn about it, but yeah, it's eventually you realize you spent a lot of time getting to a basic Apple system that should have
Yeah,
worked from out of the box.
totally.
Yeah, so at least the actors has SAG-AFTRA, and they have an actors union, and they can work together. They're ahead of the curve on this stuff, right? They already have a bit of communism, like a bit of like people working together to fight against being commoditized by AI.
Okay.
They can fight against this Tilly Norwood character. They can put that in their contracts. And the thing is, a
How,
lot of other industries don't have that, and
how do you fight
others don't
against
have
that
that.
with Hollywood? Do they say like I'm not going to be in a movie with this person?
I'm not sure what they're gonna do. Yeah, they they are just making comments right now in the press, basically trying to like make it seem really bad to use them. But
Also, isn't there this thing in music where the music is so, we call it produced, that in a way that there's like AI in it, like there's a human being that is, in theory, music is a guy stands up on stage and sings, or a girl stands up on sing, or there's a bunch of people that sing. But a lot of the music today there's a lot of production. Is that sort of, like we had auto tune, and I remember there was like a moral panic or something about how was this person's real voice, and then there's always, every once in a while, you have like a singer that's on like a tour, and they're obviously lip syncing to their own songs.
yeah,
Um, and sort of those things have become normalized. Auto tune is normalized, and lip syncing to your own song is normalized. And so I
yeah,
wonder to what extent, like in music, these things are totally normalized. And then I get the other experience, which is like, I prefer music from before all of this production happened. And I'm not talking about like I grew up in the 90s or whatever.
Like the Beatles.
I like music from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s that we have recordings of. It's like, it's good.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it definitely stands up.
Not like the Beatles, but like not besides the Beatles, like exactly.
You don't like the Beatles?
I just don't. I never really got into them. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how much of that is just, we're being old and we don't like, the youngins Gen Z music. It's hard to tell.
That might be
Is it actually worse? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely different. And I think that the Gen Z itself is jumping into all this old music as well, right?
That's what I thought. That's why I thought that like it wasn't just us being old, but I always want to be sensitive to that because I do feel like an old person at some level.
It could be, could be. I think there will still be innovation. I mean, there's still plenty of indie music, and it's not highly produced, right? It's just a person singing and a piano, right?
I wonder if that's what music becomes.
Like John Legend's "All of Me" was just a piano and John Legend singing.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that artist, but
yeah. And so yeah, I think there's like a lot of people talking about the issues with art. I mean, we can also talk about code. There's a lot of shifts now in how people are thinking about coding.
I sort of feel like what's happening to coding is what happened to farming in the 19th century, where the first generation of tractors that came out were not very good, and you had to make sure your fields were really flat and they broke down a lot. And so the complaints that I hear from programmers who are like, there's two kinds, right? There's programmers who make code for poor people, right? Like if you think of it like in the farming analogy, you have sort of like everybody farms for themselves. There's a wide distribution of quality in the food output that they have that's generally related to how good they are at farming. And like the bottom 30% is really bad. And so we had to pass laws like the USDA and the FDA to bring up food safety. And so then all of those laws relate to the mechanization of farming at the lowest level. And that farming is bad. Like you and I probably choose not to eat that kind of food, but it's better than what people in the bottom, let's say 30%, had access to. And so like now people who are close to poverty or whatever, they have quite excellent food. And I look at the situation in coding very similarly, where there was this entire class of application that was built for companies. It was internal to those companies, to their processes. It was outsourced to Asia in the last 20 years. Now, a lot of that stuff is coming back to the US. These are not applications that are going to be like the next TikTok or Instagram or whatever. These are, basically a user interface on top of a database, just over and over and over again. And the AI makes that work. And you don't really care like if the code is internally consistent. It just needs to like not fail. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but then I read comments on Hacker News that are like, oh, my manager is making me use AI. So I just run Cursor and then throw out all the code and then do it myself faster.
I think that's like a Just Know story. I read that.
This is in a random comment. It's not trying to go viral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so on point as well. Like another person just posted a tweet that said Opendoor was forcing everyone to use AI. And he was totally serious. That's not a Just So story. He's like publicly tweeting performatively maybe, but I think he's serious, just like the Shopify CEO, that he's forcing everyone to be AI first. And what does that mean? It's just performative. It's just like, oh yeah, I'll tell you I did AI, but let me go do my job.
I think that's what's happening. I think both things can be true at once. I think it can be true that most programmers are quite bad, and so using AI elevates them. Shots fired. Okay, fine. And then the people that you and I know who are like doing innovation, even if it's at Opendoor, they have this allergic reaction to these coding tools because they're actually super confusing, introduce a lot of complexity and bugs that are hard to decompose because the computer doesn't think in the same way that a person does. So you get like, all this code that comes out and you're like, this doesn't really make any sense, but it almost compiles, you know? And so then you're like trying to do tracing on it and it doesn't quite work. And so you spend just as much time trying to figure out where the AI wrote it wrong as if you could have just written it yourself. And then the problem is that now you have the issue where when human beings wrote code, there was, sort of like beginners and experts would very heavily comment their code. And the expert would make their code easy to understand because they knew in 2 years, either they or somebody else would return to it and have to fix a bug. And so you'd want it to be like really explicable. And now you have
to be twice as intelligent, as Kernighan said. My professor at Princeton, Kernighan, would say, you have to be twice as intelligent to debug your code as it is to write it. So
exactly. And so I always experience this thing where it's like novices in programming would comment their code, write really simple functions. Intermediates would not comment their code. They'd write the most dense one-line code thing that would be perfect or whatever. And then experts would comment their code and make it simple like the novices. And it's not because they didn't understand how to do the one-line thing of the intermediate. It's because they knew that the guy that gets hired in 2 years doesn't know, or themselves coming back over a code base. There were a lot of cases where I worked with people that would be like, oh, I'm pulling up a file that I wrote 3 years ago. And if they would see a comment from themselves, like the guy's name was Jacques, and be like, sorry, future Jacques, like I couldn't figure this out. And there's this like spaghetti code that kind of works. And then it causes all kinds of
very thoughtful
complexity errors. So they would like write messages to themselves in the future, knowing that they would have to come back and fix that problem. And so what I'm seeing AI coding
I've done that a lot. Yeah.
What I'm seeing AI coding do is people who are intermediates are generating 10 times more of this bullshit code that nobody can read. And so what happens is that they write the code, they get it to pass the unit tests, it functions at some level, they put it in there. And then, okay, what they're doing is they're 10xing the technical debt. That's what I think. And I think that you're going to get to a situation where code that's written with AIs is going to be single use.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are.
I'm dead serious.
Using now, they're building like shell utilities that are like quickly coded, and then they forget about them, which is what they would do anyway. But it would take 10 hours, and now it just takes 10 minutes, and that works pretty well. I mean, I have the same experience as all these other people that are spending, hundreds of hours trying. I tried something, it didn't quite work. I tried to make it work, and it took longer, and it was a waste of time. And that's what the AI tools are. And obviously Sam Altman and Dario are saying that it's going to do all coding next year, but everyone's experience is opposite. So
yeah, I think both things can be true at the same time. So I do think that if you have a business process that needs to be run one time, then you're going to write, or one time and you run it every single day, and it's a continuous process. Then it's going to be what I call like throwaway code. You're going to have the AI spit out the app, the whole app, whatever it is, all the dependencies, everything. It's going to run, it's going to work for whatever that process is. And then it's going to continue working until somebody stops using it for whatever reason. And then the next time that same problem recurs, they'll just write a new app. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, if you're a centaur, so if you're a human being that wants to use an AI like you, the challenge that humans have is not that AI isn't productive, because there's tons of very smart people who are using AI in their very particular workflow in a way that makes sense. And you and I are in some group chats together, and you can watch as people say, oh, I do this, and this is how I do it. That learning, that horizontal learning between people who know how to do it, there's no signaling mechanism. So on the web, we were able to find high quality websites because PageRank was able to look at people that were linking to them. There is no way to get any signal in the endless noise of AI workflows, which workflows are actually working well and which ones aren't. There's no objective way. This was a problem that I tried to solve with the.
That's what you were building. You were building the website.
Yeah, so I tried to solve that, and we got really far, and it was working. But then my co-founder and we had sort of like life issues come up, and so we sort of parted ways. So unfortunately, like that project went.
You should have had an AI co-founder. They're not reliable.
If there's an AI that could help, if there's an AI that could help with that, like I might still pick it up, because
Yeah.
the problem that we had identified, which was there was no way to value these workflows, and because like I meet people like you, or I meet, like Alex or whatever, where they say like, oh, I'm using it in this very specific use case. And you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But then first of all, that use case is changing through time. And then second of all, there's no diffusion of that use case across because there's so much noise from all the marketing. So like, for example, there's a problem economically with the way AI is being marketed, which is that every venture capitalist is having their companies throw tons of money telling you that their AI is the best thing ever because there's a distribution problem in how to use the workflows. And so what you end up having happen is that all the noise gets also amplified. And so there's just no way to sift the signal out. And so there's sort of like this prisoner's dilemma where everyone spends maximally on marketing and you just hope that people like adopt one tool and then there's like a breakthrough and then that tool is able to create a flywheel with that breakthrough. But I haven't really seen that. And then the other thing is that
That's
like,
right. I mean, all this AI stuff is a total fluke. It's an accident that it does any kind of math. And every time it does, we're shocked by it. And so now we're like, oh, it's going to become
yeah.
AI,
Well, and it's
super
also,
AI, even though we
it's
don't even know why it worked or even that anything else will work. We're shocked that it's still
exactly.
working
It's like,
for anything.
it's like you're in a pool of water and people are throwing rocks in the pool. And so then you're like, okay, that rock was there. And then the next time there's a wave, it'll be bigger or whatever. And people keep throwing rocks into different parts of the pool. And so you don't know like where the waves are going to hit you. And sometimes they cancel, sometimes they go really big and you have no like mental orientation for what's going on.
That's funny. And the idea is like, oh, we'll make a rogue wave by throwing these rocks. And like, obviously it's not happening.
Yeah. Or like you expect, because you don't know that it's a rock being thrown in. For all you know, it's like a big person like displacing enough water that it makes a wave, right? That's like what a company would be in this case. So like Vercel is a great example. Why does that company have a ton of money and why do they have a bunch of usage and a bunch of revenue? No idea.
We use Vercel. We paid them for years.
Yeah.
Young engineers like it because it helps them deploy without thinking. Like they're like, oh, it's automatic to use. If you use React, which is the popular thing now, it's like launch with Vercel because they made it like super easy, one click to do it. And so people who are into like the trendy JavaScript thing are just using that Vercel.
So it's basically a distribution mechanism.
No, it's hosting like AWS.
Oh, like from localhost to
React.
So from localhost to like a cloud VPS, basically.
Yeah, it's like if they're the same, it's like if they RDS but only did React. It's like
it's like exactly. It's like a container or whatever. I push a button and then it deploys and it can be used as opposed to
AWS is like it's every little knob and switch and it's highly configurable. Vercel is like just does React, it just works. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. And it's supposed to be really fast. That's one thing he blogged about, like how it's 100 times faster than anything else you're doing, even though I think in practice it's not very fast, but it's fine. Kids like it.
Well, and again, that gets back to the VC thing where you just want maximum flashing lights because then everyone's like, oh, okay, now we're going to just all use Vercel and no one's going to use Replit because doesn't Replit do functionally the same thing?
There are a few apps now that are more than just hosting. They're also AI coding, and Vercel has V0. Replit has this AI coding and hosting. Lovable as well, and Lovable's growing very quickly. And they're a sponsor, by the way, of Hangout. Use code Hangout FM on Lovable.
You got to drop it in. Got to drop it in for our viewers. For Joshua and the other guy.
Okay. We have hundreds of viewers now. 130 people viewing live right now.
There you go. So anyway, back to this. I think now that I'm older, I always feel like nothing ever happens, but then something's always happening. So it's a tale of two cities. And so we have people like us and all of our friends who are coding, who are scratching their heads, pulling their hair out. Like, what am I supposed to do with this AI thing? It's just causing just as much chaos as it is.
Well, it's interesting because nothing ever did happen for a long time, like the 90s and like 2000s, like nothing happened. And then suddenly in the last 6 years, it's really shifted quite a bit. Like Peter Thiel 20 years ago, and he was right. Like, oh, we wanted flying cars. All we got was like 280 characters, right?
I disagree. So there was a lot of innovation in unregulated areas. So like sports equipment has gotten much, much better over the last 30 years.
Like
Skiing,
golf
bikes,
clubs.
yeah, golf clubs, bikes, skis, um, just just incredible, absolutely incredible. The innovation that's happened in atoms between when we were kids and when we were like just graduated from college.
Okay.
And so I think Peter's issue, and I think this is maybe why he softened this, is that he was sort of like a gay
Because
guy.
he's not an athlete. Is that why he didn't
No,
notice?
it's just like he wouldn't go outside. He was like a nerd that would be in his house and he like didn't go
Okay.
outside. So like for
Okay.
example, hiking shoes, all that stuff, all the
Okay.
textile innovation that's occurred. I mean, it's been incredible. The non-iron shirts, all of that stuff has had a massive. I mean, you don't really remember this.
Maybe it could,
People
yeah, I
used to
don't. I
wear
wouldn't remember it. I didn't really do skiing 20 years ago.
people used to wear like clothes to work, and then they would have to take them to the dry cleaners every week. Now with non-iron shirts, you don't have to do that, and that's like a huge amount of productivity. And you can say like,
sure.
oh well, we don't have.
What did we do with all this productivity? I agree. I think there's been a huge unproductivity unlock. But what do we do? Oh, we're just spending on TikTok. Is that
I think a lot of it is Netflix. I think a lot of it is YouTube. I think people
YouTube. Yeah.
I think people consistently underestimate how much YouTube is used. Personally, I think it's really one of the most amazing things ever.
Yes, it's the biggest social network now.
What was fascinating to me was I remember early 2000s. I used to like kind of spelunk on Wikipedia, where you would just like read something and find that really interesting and then go read something else. Now I kind of do the same behavior on YouTube, and I think a lot of people.
Me too. I try to not use YouTube, and I'm now doing that as well. I find it very good.
I don't do it for like politics or anything that's touches any of the cultural issues. But there's stuff
Ezra Klein has some good videos now. Ezra Klein is good. He talks politics, which is
yeah. So if you stay away from that kind of stuff, like I had a lot of interest on like the Dutch East India Company the other day, and so like I did like tens of hours on the VOC and like learning about that. I just think it's really fascinating, and there's just so much data. Now, obviously, you have the same sourcing issues that we always had, but it's kind of like how everyone used to have a blog. A lot of people now have YouTube channels. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I went deep diving into like the NATO and Greece and Turkey and their militaries, and it was highly inefficient to watch these really terrible YouTube videos. But they did have facts that I didn't know, and they presented it in a very compelling way. Like, oh, you didn't know this about whatever Greek military, like, and I was like, okay, I didn't know that, and it's interesting, and it would be hard to kind of like know
it would be
that to Wikipedia, even though I'm sure Wikipedia has way more facts I can learn in 5 seconds.
Yeah, it would be great if there was like a plugin from, insert your favorite AI that you could summarize all those videos, and then it would tell you like they made this claim in the video, which is disputed by my data set. One of the interesting things. So
that could never work because Google would lock it down. Google.
No, I understand that, but Google will eventually come out with their own AI summary thing for all these videos, and then the challenge is
they won't, because they don't want their ad money. They want you to watch. They want you to spend hours looking at their videos.
Okay, fair enough. Well, anyway, what I was going to say is Elon is making this Grok Wikipedia, and I think that on the one hand, this is like a really interesting project. Like he claims that Wikipedia is really sort of lost its way, and having been around the Internet Archive and a lot of these people, I would tend to agree that Wikipedia in areas can be difficult. I mean, you and I had a situation with Wikipedia where we were challenged ourselves, so I know personally like a little bit behind the curtain. But the issue is that if Elon is going to go and create his own open source Wikipedia, that's how you, because people are going to just defer whatever the AI says. Like how every generation just sort of blindly believes. So like, for example, in America, we have this story that at the turn of the 20th century, populism was really powerful. And so that's why we needed to pass the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th Amendments. But like, if you look at how many people own newspapers and distribution, it could have just been like 10 guys decided they wanted to pass those amendments, which all benefit them, by the way. And everyone would be like, oh yeah, it must have been populism, because they just believed the Associated Press and Reuters and these like newswire services. And then we learned later that it was kind of like bullshit. And it's the same thing with radio, where people had the War of the Worlds broadcasts and they just believed whatever was on the radio. And then the same thing with television. And we experience this now with our parents and grandparents, where if it was on TV, if it was on the nightly news, well, then it must be true. And then it was the same thing with certain influencers and blog posts and whatever. And so now I just feel like we're going to go through the same moral hazard again with AI, where the AI is going to say something and people are like, oh, well, the AI said it, so it must be true. And you're like, I don't know.
Do you think we've already jumped the shark? Do people not believe it already because it's been so bad?
To what extent?
You think they'll start to trust it eventually?
So I think there's
trust it?
So I think 90% of people believe whatever they're told, and they don't question it.
I think they believe certain things. I don't know if it's necessarily everything.
Yeah. So if
trust is built, and I don't know if it's reliable, then people will trust it.
Yeah. So the question of reliability is a challenged one, because 80% or so of our reality is socially mediated. And so it's not really the case that reality intervenes very often. So you will sometimes see people have a quote unquote come to Jesus moment when their life goes through like a really sharp point, and then they suddenly get, reoriented back to reality. But because so much of our reality is socially mediated, you don't really need to be reoriented reality. You just need to sort of follow somebody who's the most powerful person in your area. And you and I had talked about this about 5 years ago, with how like the US was balkanizing into these regional oligopolies, where you would have all the people that worked for Facebook would never really interact in their entire careers with all the people that worked for Amazon. And it was this sort of like really weird thing where all the parties that you went to, all the funding that you had, like everything was like separated, right? And you and I were in neither of those, which is why I picked them. But like there's these different like verticals that you may or may not be aware of. And so you have kind of like a feudal lord at the top of the vertical. And I think that a lot of people just sort of believe whatever their feudal lord says. So for example, like with Trump, there's a lot of people in this country where he can say literally anything and they'll just believe it. And I think it's very common. And there's the same on the left, but I think it's really easy to see with Trump in particular, given our media environment. Because it's less obvious, like with AOC and Schumer and all these people that I would say are equivalent, but it's the same thing. So functionally, I think like 90% of people just believe what they're told. And I think change only really happens as old people die. Like the people that were telling them things die, and then there's new people that tell them things. And so then because there's new people, then you get sort of like new ideas in society. The difference between now and even 20 years ago is that the 10% of people who actually question things or try to think it through, and don't get me wrong, like I'm one of these people who questions everything and I get it wrong very often. You know this in our personal interaction.
You question a lot of things.
Exactly. Every single thing. Behind me, this one down here, this one is from Berkeley. It's the Question Status Quo Award. And it was basically like the Aspel Award, right? And it's because I'd be like, well, is that really true? And it's like, dude, this is like a basic economic assumption, right? So I'm very guilty of this as well, where you question everything. But what's interesting, because of the internet and because of the censorship regime on the previous Twitter and sort of the way that the media environment has evolved, is that all of the 10% people can find themselves. Whereas it used to be they were really spread out and it was difficult to meet them, and you'd have to go to like a physical place.
That's why the Iraq War happened. Like 10% of people at least were like, we shouldn't do this. And they were all just separate. Because you told someone and everyone was like, yeah, whatever. We're just
yeah, whatever. It's said on the news that
Hillary Clinton said do it. So
yeah, well, and that's exactly right. And again, I try to steer away from politics too much, but if you look at false flags in the past, like with the Lusitania and the Gulf of Tonkin incident, those were both incidents that the government and the media told us were a certain way, that we learned in the case of Lusitania nearly 100 years later, and the Gulf of Tonkin incident like 40 years later, that we were lied to, and they were a predicate to a major war. And there's arguments about Iraq, like you brought up, but again, that's within living memory, so we'll sort of steer away from it. You can sort of look at what's going on with Israel right now, and they're like trying to control the media environment. It's like not working because people have TikTok. They're like, no, dude, what you're saying is like straight up not true. You're shooting kids. Like, it's not good. Don't do that, please. And so this is what I think is different. Like before, all these people were all in their little clusters and they couldn't communicate. But now you and I, we would not have inhabited the same physical spaces. So first of all, we live, I think, like 60 miles apart. And then the other thing is that we have entirely different social graphs. And so in the past, we wouldn't even communicate really, but now we can communicate whenever on Signal or on WhatsApp or whatever. And so if there's these, because like my friend Adam, he wrote on Twitter or whatever, X, yesterday or the day before, that he's very concerned that a 2020 style mass hysteria can occur again. And whether you believe COVID was a mass hysteria or not, like set that aside, just think of it as a possibility. And I was like, Adam, I don't know, because after COVID, we all, oh, you're on video. We all sort of like created all these groups so that immediately everyone goes to their group and like, what do you think about this? Right. And so like the distribution of sort of like disagreeable guys who like question everything is such that everybody's very
Wait,
adjacent.
are you on a conspiracy theory chat group?
Oh, I'm on a bunch of them.
Oh, interesting. Like
Yeah.
it's just people like you who are like questioning.
Well, so I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? I have a consistent view of reality, and then I update it's internally consistent, because otherwise they go crazy. So there's things that I believe, and then there's other people that believe similar things, and you could call it an affinity group, and then we're together. And because we've invested time,
well, what's like the name of that group?
No, come on, man. We don't need, I don't need this for whatever Gestapo comes in next, right? We already talked about surveillance. There's tons of these groups, and some of them are obnoxious, where it's like you have a billionaire and all his fans. But then there's there's other ones like you and I are in a group together where we talk about AI. That's a great example of one of these affinity groups where if something new about AI, we put it in that group, and then everybody sort of weighs in. And over time, we get a sense for the orientation of every person who's in the group. And so then we can learn to sense make or interpret new information based on their orientation. And I would say the same thing happens. And then because, again, like I said, there's not that many people who sort of question their reality. And you find all these people, you have this very weird experience where it's like I know a lot of the people in the administration who are doing stuff. And I would not say there's a lot of people in the US federal government, even though there are technically, when you count contractors, millions of people, right? So it's like, oh, we need to talk to somebody at whatever department to figure something out. We can find that person very fast.
Whereas using LinkedIn, using the chats?
No, the chat group. You'd be like, hey, I have an issue with my, container. It's stuck in the Port of Long Beach because, CBP is holding it up because it doesn't have a form, whatever. And they'll be like, oh yeah, you need to talk to this person over here. Whereas before, you'd have to talk to your shipper. You'd have to
it'll take weeks. They gotta go call someone on the phone or fly somewhere.
Yeah, or you'd have to go and talk to your congressperson or whatever, and then they would have to call in a favor. And in the meantime, your shipping container is, accruing $150 a day in demurrage fees or whatever. So it's expensive.
I'm just wondering where all this efficiency is going. It seems like we're way more efficient. We're not doing all this. If you look at business in the 60s, they were hand copying before Xerox.
I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude, but there's a big difference between business today and business in the 60s.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Demographically, there's a big difference. And maybe we introduced a demographic that likes to talk a lot and create a lot of unnecessary rules and procedures. And if you look at industries where that demographic is more dominant, there's more rules and procedures. We literally have this.
I don't think we're spending time doing rules and procedures.
I disagree entirely. Go read about McKinsey, where they talk about how 90% of people in corporate America at companies larger than 500 people spend almost all their time in meetings, preparing for meetings, writing slide decks so they can write slide decks. I completely disagree. Most people who are in large organizations spend the vast majority of their time doing bullshit work. And it's all corporate compliance, CYA stuff that didn't exist before.
I think there's certainly some corporate compliance and HR and stuff, but it's not 60%.
No, it's not HR. It's going from a content-based hierarchy to a context-based hierarchy. So it's not that everyone's concerned about making an HR violation. It's that you can't do anything without considering the context of how whatever you're suggesting would be interpreted by all the parties. That was not a thing before. We literally had this, I literally had this conversation, which was, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, we could build the Golden Gate Bridge. Now we can't fix the Baltimore Bridge. Like, why is that? Right. And you're like, there's a lot of reasons. And my solution was like two things. One of them was basically everyone over a certain BMI, you should just fire. And you could be like, Michael, that's not very nice. And then I got called like, oh, that's sort of the Hegseth position with the generals. And I would say, well, the thing is that when we used to be able to do things properly, like nobody was overly fat. Right. And so like you have to go back to a state that was good and then figure out why it's not good now. And it's not necessarily that these things are causal, even though everybody wants a causal reason. It's just like there's correlational reasons. And if you can't ever figure out what the causal reason is, then you have to fall back to this correlational reasoning. Anyway, the answer to your question is, in the 60s, people didn't have a million meetings about whether they should recommend that the company try a new thing that might disrupt its existing business line. That's just like not a thing that would happen.
Yeah. But maybe the companies are more efficient, not disrupting their business line as much as they used to screw up all their business.
I disagree because the length of time that companies spend in the S&P 500 is decreasing every year.
That's true. That is,
and you can even see this in startups as well, where the length of time to quote unquote harvest the value of the company is also shrinking, which is why this whole Sarbanes-Oxley, nobody goes public except for Chamath Palihapitiya's latest SPAC, is a problem, because the length of time that you're going to capture value is shrinking, and then the length of time that you're valuable is also shrinking. And so you have this.
I mean, how can it be true that S&P's the turnover is higher and we're not IPOing new companies as much? It can't both be true unless your old other companies are right.
Well, so a lot of these older. Why is it that the growth rate in the top 7 stocks is 30% and the rest of them is 3%? Right. So in some way, the ideas, the consumer surplus of these new companies is being like, these new companies create value, producers value, and then it gets turned into consumer surplus because of different changes in the environment. And they don't have a defensible demand side economy of scale or otherwise monopoly that they can use to capture their value. Like Facebook's strategy at this point is functionally an attrition strategy. And so, and they're going to continue to accrue gains even as you have all these new entrants and everything like that, because they're using all kinds of regulatory stuff and they have all this non-economic value to the various regulating apparatus that makes it so there's like weird stuff that can happen. Like the TikTok thing. Remember you talked to me about how like the most beneficial person just think of it like Mark Zuckerberg versus Larry Ellison. Mark Zuckerberg only knows social networks. Larry Ellison only knows selling to large corporates. Do you think that TikTok is more or less of a threat to Instagram?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Mark Zuckerberg got his wish. Like,
yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Is like,
and it has nothing to do with. Yeah, it has nothing really to do with the value of Instagram on a product basis.
So much value given to Google and Facebook for this. Like, I don't know how. It's interesting how many people are going to leave TikTok and go to other great music social networks like Hangout, the best music social network.
I think it's great. I think, and the thing is the longer that Facebook ossifies by doing this kind of politics first strategy, the greater the benefit will be. I don't know. You can always look at it in two negative ways, one negative way or one positive way, right? You can just say like Facebook and Google have non-product regulatory capture. Basically, they're so useful to the administrative state, or however you want to call it, that they can just. So, like for example, the U.S. government serves as like the watchdog against the Europeans, endlessly fining all the U.S. tech companies. And so they basically will do whatever the U.S. government says, right? So there was a whole thing about YouTube saying that both YouTube and Facebook have admitted in the last however many weeks that whenever the Biden administration, or probably the Trump administration too, let's just be fair.
Let's get back to AI. I was just going to say the AI censorship. AI censorship. Okay.
They literally just did whatever they were told, and part of it is that they get protected from the European Union issuing them fines.
Interesting. I think that it's interesting that Mark Zuckerberg said that he's going to invest more billions into AI, and he thinks that he's underspending into AI. I think that's an interesting comment to make.
Why do you
And
think
all the billions are going to NVIDIA. I don't know how that can last. Like, I get that they're getting lots of money from Oracle's promise to build AI centers, but like, what if that doesn't happen? Then Oracle crashes, OpenAI crashes, NVIDIA crashes.
I don't think that Larry Ellison is the kind of person that does these kind of like all or nothing bets. So I think if
Yeah,
he,
it's like he's doing a double or nothing bet. He's literally
I don't
put
think
all of
so.
his chips into
No,
this.
I don't think so.
You
I
think he's
think this,
covered on the downside?
I think he's totally 100% covered on the downside. And we already talked
Yeah,
about
fair
what my
enough.
thesis is on that. And I'm not wrong. We'll find out.
I agree, but he won't be the richest person in the world anymore. It'll go back to where it was.
I don't know. It's not clear to me that if you were helping the U.S. government break encryption, that you wouldn't become the richest person in the world. So
You think that this is your encryption idea? So
yeah,
you think Larry orchestrated all of this? He just needed a reason to buy a ton of
I think
gigawatts and compute.
so. I think two things can be true at once. One thing is I think that the ChatGPT moment was real, and that it provides a tremendous amount of value. I also think that the US government has been evolving their attacks using quantum computers against cryptography for many years. And the attack vector of this is not Shor's algorithm, so they don't need to calculate the whole key. There's a very specific evolutionary graph of how these attacks are occurring. And I think that sometime in the last year or so, they started to be successful at breaking AES. And I think
You think in
that
the last year, not 3
yeah,
years ago?
I think when we had July 4th and somebody moved all the Bitcoin, that was kind of like the US government saying like, hey, we got the Bitcoin, this is a whole
No, why would you do
anyway,
it publicly? It
that's
doesn't make
fine.
sense.
That's fine. We don't need to we don't need to get into the specifics of that. But my point was it seems like they have been able to break encryption with quantum computers since 2018, 2019. But that breaking symmetric key with AES has only been something that's possible in the last year or so. And I think that after that was clear that the attack is a hybrid attack, so it requires a ton of classical compute. And so now you have to be in a situation where the government needs to deploy tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars in classical compute infrastructure in order to affect this this technology. Like it's a Manhattan Project style thing. And I think that AI is the perfect umbrella under which to do this. And Larry Ellison, who's been selling surveillance technology to the government with the databases and all the ecosystem of law enforcement products that he's had, and all of the incubation that he's had for all these years, I think that he is the perfect person in the entire ecosystem to affect that data center build out. And he does not strike me as the kind of guy that would speculatively blow his entire fortune on a floozy. Like, oh, we're going to build it and hope that they come. I don't believe that at all. I think his downside is protected 100%. That's just my opinion. If you look at the Coatue report,
that is a consistent internal world model.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. And like, it may come out that Larry Ellison did sort of bet the farm, and I'll just be like, yeah, it was wrong. And then it may come out that we never learned like what actually happened. And then, maybe when you and I are both dead, because I think they'll tell us about this when we're all dead.
I mean, he's also old. Like maybe he's like, this is just, like last, all in because he's leaving the casino. I don't know.
I don't know.
I gotta go. We gotta go.
Oh, we gotta go. All right. Bye.